You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Kinezic.
We did discuss that we each have our own niche. Like we do, even though we do 2-inch plugs and we do woodies and we do liners and seed, we do somewhat specialize in wetland plants, and the subcategory that is salt marsh. Salt marsh is the largest portion of our business. We probably do more salt marsh than anything else. So that's our niche. And a lot of that's because of where we're located, but we each kind of have our own niche. And I'm curious how everyone chose the direction that you went. Like, why did you choose the size that you went, or this specific, like John, why are you doing aquatics? That type of thing. Like, just curious where we all fell into where we fell. Mm-hmm. We could start anywhere, whoever wants to go first.
I would say for us, aquatic plants, Pinelands, you guys are obviously the originators of doing this. But there's just such a need with urban infrastructure projects and stormwater management. I think that's been really a focus of new development, in the last 20 years or so, if not longer. And the reason why we do the aquatics is because, number one, there's not a lot of folks that are doing it, but also there's a high demand out there. And for ways for us to be able to impact the broader environment, for me, I believe it all starts with water quality and water. So that's really why we've maintained the focus of aquatic plants. And, and specifically in the sizes that we grow, that 2-inch plug for all of our obligate species, there's hydrology present when you're planting aquatics. So you're actually creating less disturbance by trying to dig a bigger root ball into, let's say, a mucky, sandy soil where you're planting this. So that's why we've stayed with our 2-inch plugs as well.
I think for us, that's very similar because we're doing a lot of wetland stuff, and you find with a lot of wetland plants, they tend to be on, for the most part, more shallow rooted. Mm-hmm. So it's, we didn't see a need, and we don't really expand out much into upland. We have some uplands, but not enough to create a whole different line. It just doesn't really cross over. So it was, I think, Don Kinezic, truly credits a lot of what we do to environmental concern, really being his mentor and sure. what we do. There wasn't someone in our area doing that, so we wanted to have something a little more local. And I think that's kind of where it sprouted. But Steve, do you want to go next?
Yeah. I talked about it a little bit in the introduction, but we're wholesale grower. We supply a lot of growers. So a lot of the growers put demands on us, or have over the years, and we've grown a lot of different plants, native and non-native, but to focus in on the native plants and the native plant market that we wanted to kind of continue to thrive in. For the first 20 years of my business, I had a partner, and we shared lots of conversations about where we wanted to be. And, we know that there's markets in salt marshes and super aquatic areas, but it wasn't North Creek's niche. And, we are a little bit more upland. We do marginal aquatic species. We do good ground covers, rain gardens as they kind of start to become more popular. And there was demand for those plants. We went in that market. We do a lot of ferns. So we are a very large fern grower now, and ornamental grasses. And back in the 80s, the only ornamental grass available was typically miscanthus. And so, following in the footsteps of some of the storied nurserymen that brought ornamental grasses into prominence, they were exotic species. And early on, North Creek, had to make some decisions about who we want to be. And sure, we could make money growing exotic grasses, and we still have a couple. But when we looked at things that are invasive and non-native invasives, and I'll pick on miscanthus because I like to pick on that. Because and once you see invasive species, and I know it's not an invasive species thing, but, and I spent a lot of time on like the Invasive Species Council and helping our state with that. You can't look away. And then you start to realize how many exotic species are out there, and we don't want to be the people. I want to mediate them, not and put native plants back in their place. Mm-hmm. So we found that, growing more panicums, eventually growing carex and schizachyrium or andropogons, the warm season grasses. I mean, there were plenty of plants to grow and introduce back into native landscapes, and that's where we really put our focus. And had made some tough decisions, financial decisions, when there wasn't a native plant market. So I'm going back to when, this was all new. I mean, you talked about Don. He used to put classes on. We used to drive up to Columbia, and the Dale and I, it's like, these are engineers. We're going into the class with the engineers, and we're the native plant guys. Who doesn't fit into this group? But man, we learned so much, and as we developed the landscape plugs and that market and it matured, we started to take a lot of our focus, and still working with the growers, but we started to really put our marketing focus into landscape architects, engineers, municipalities, nature centers, and those people that actually are the specifiers of the plant material, and let them understand that a lot of times specifiers are not plant people.
Yeah.
So they can specify plants. I know, John, you guys all probably know this, they're not available. And then whether or not you can make them available, or whether or not you can guide them into plants that do the same thing. So we do a lot of education. It was one of our values, core values, is to educate. And I think it has to be with the native plant nursery.
Yeah, just because you're a landscape architect doesn't mean that you're well versed on native plants, because there's a lot of other specialties, or an engineer. So it's still finding a means to educate those that want to go in those direction. And it's, for every nursery that feels the way that we do here collectively, there's 10 to 20 that don't. So and that's what we're fighting against, to try to change sometimes with a way of thinking. So it's nice to see that out of the 4 nurseries that are here, that 2 of them are new. So it's newer nurseries on this focus, because we need more of that as well, and it's, so Steve's comments, actually, I wrote down like 3 more questions that I wanted to throw back, but I want Daryl and Carrie to go first. And because I want to ask some of these questions to everyone after, because the 2 of you could have started anywhere, and you started with 1 gallon containers, and you started wholesale. So it's just curious why you chose that sizing.
1 gallons for sure was a quick turn, so we could get it out to the end user pretty quickly. And being both landscape architects, wanting to get that, have that product available to the end user was really important. There's Pinelands, there's North Creek, there's plenty of other guys out there that or other nurseries that are doing the plug that can go for restoration jobs, but not much that can go directly to your typical, commercial landscape job site or a home landscape job site. And that's kind of where we fell with choosing that size.
Okay. All right. Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planted podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.